Hello everyone, I'm Cam. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Mother Mary. This is the latest psychological drama supernatural horror film by David Lowery, produced and distributed by A24. This film came out a bit earlier in the year, back in April, and as you might be able to tell, this did not grab audience attentions in the same way some other psychological supernatural A24 films would. It made back only about $2 million of its $20 million budget, which is only about 10%. This pales in comparison to David Lowery's last film, The Green Knight, which, even though it was released during the pandemic, made back its budget. And I do bring this up because even though I don't really care that much about how well films perform at the box office, it is a signal that maybe David Lowery's next project won't be as artsy or ambitious as Mother Mary. Here we follow Mother Mary, a Gaga-esque pop star who, on the eve before her big comeback tour, decides to reconnect with her old friend and former dressmaker Sam. With that said, I do see why this isn't really connecting with audiences. It is a very quiet, metaphorical, allegorical piece about art and our connection with others. And it leaves a lot to the imagination, it leaves a lot of things unsaid, and it leaves it to the audience to fill in these gaps with their own meanings and interpretations. So I think this really is a film where the meaning you find is whatever you make of it. This results in a piece that may deeply resonate with some people, but it may leave some people shaking their heads, saying this was boring, pretentious, and all around not a very well communicated or constructed film. I personally fall into the former category. I found this a really beautiful experience, but I can definitely see why some people aren't connecting with it. It is a film that begs the audience to fill in these gaps and come to their own conclusions. And I'll be the first to admit that my opinion is very biased in favor of this film. I was completely swept up by the visual presentation and the aesthetics of Mother Mary. I'm a big sucker for a story about pop stars with bright flashing lights and giant set pieces, supernatural horror, a little bit of body horror, some beautiful fabrics. These things all just appeal to my tastes, and you have a soundtrack with contributions by Charlie XCX and FKA Twigs. It all comes together into a piece that I would find it extremely hard to hate unless it was just an exceptionally bad film. And even despite all these glamorous aesthetic flourishes, I found the performances to be the strongest aspect of the film. Again, Michaela Cole, she has just such a striking face, and she carries these lines with such smoldering resentment and anger towards Mother Mary. But you do feel a tenderness and a gentleness in her voice at some points in the film, and she really brings to life this idea of reopening old wounds to resolve past conflicts and using art to connect with other people who are like-minded to us but may not be able to communicate it in the same ways that an average person would. And you have the central Mother Mary performance by Anne Hathaway, which I could see some people finding as emotionally distant, but I do think it works for her character. She is this glamorous, unreachable pop star who, of course, as an artist, may find it a little difficult to explain herself or connect to other people with just words. For the first half of the film, we're sat down in this very rustic barn. From here, we're sat with two characters trying to bridge the gap in communication and the emotional rift that's been created between them in the 8 or something years that they've been apart. Sam is really digging into Mary with these pieces of very wordy, overwrought, poetic pieces of dialogue. And it feels like she's been storing up these feelings over time, trying to not let them spill over, but now that the opportunity is here, she's going in full force. I believe there's a line that goes something like, "You taught me the meaning of love and hatred, and I've come to the conclusion that you deserve neither." And it's very clear that Sam is harboring these very strong emotional feelings, and they've just been suppressed so far deep into the surface. And it's in the body horror that we see in the film that these feelings start to, again, rise to the surface, and it's up to Mary to really dig them out with sharp objects. Michaela Cole, she's playing this character who is an artist, she's a dressmaker, and she weaves together these emotions and these feelings through her words and through her art. Meanwhile, Mary is a character who she's all about the performance. She says things like, I can give you a dance, I can give you a song, I can buy you a house, but I can't just say these words out loud. So eventually, she's the person to take on the physical role of literally opening these old wounds to bring out the spirits within them. This is a film that really leans into the abstract, metaphorical, metaphysical energy. So many shots of this film are just characters shrouded in darkness with red lights looming around them. The cinematography in this film is done by Rena Yang and Andrew Dos Palermo. Rena Yang also did cinematography for a short film that I really enjoyed called Kiss of the Rapid God. And it's another very spiritual, neon red infused short film about love and connection and a little bit of body horror. In Mother Mary, the constant red lights seem to signify the presence of the Red Lady. This is a somewhat supernatural force that embodies the pain and resentment and the emotional connection between Sam and the Mary character. The big turning point in this film is the reveal of the Red Lady. She's unleashed by Sam's character as she undergoes a very painful personal experience with the Mary character. Sam attends a Mother Mary concert, and once Sam realizes how little she's needed by Mary at this point, she clenches her jaw so hard that I believe her wisdom teeth breaks. There's very sparing use of comedy in this film, but this is a very funny moment where Sam is like, I underwent so much pain and malice for you. And Mary's like visibly shaken, and Sam's like, no, I just made that up. I went to the dentist. I wouldn't actually cut out my own tooth. This is, however, the pivotal moment where the body horror is first introduced into the film. Sam's character opens a wound in her mouth, and in the night, it seems to be this open wound that the Red Lady seeps out of. We get a shot of blood on the bed, and it trails out into the distance. We see a red fabric floating into the unknown, seemingly seeking out its counterpart in Mother Mary. Also, apologies for saying like and that so much. This is fully unscripted, if you can't tell. Now, the Red Lady, I don't believe is a malicious force. It seems to be the metaphysical entity that draws the two women together. It seems to seek out Mary all the way across the ocean. She begins experiencing these hazy visions of red, and she sees the fabric all around her. A literal wound is ripped open in Mary's hand, and that is, of course, the entry point for the Red Lady. She spends a lot of her time trying to resist this oncoming force, but she's been so worn down by her constant touring. It's exhausting to her being this figure who's completely untouchable. She has very few real connections. She's drawn closer and closer to that Sam character. Early into the film, there's references of a major accident that occurred during one of Mary's tours that, of course, caused her to go on hiatus. Later in the film, we're revealed the scene, and it seems to be the moment where Mother Mary finally decides to let the Red Lady in. She's fully engulfed by this red halo and floating fabric, and she's compelled to jump off her floating tour stage, and she plummets almost to the ground, but she's held up by a suspension cord, and that is why she has a giant scar on her back. After that, we get the big in-barn seance sequence. They discuss how an object only has the meaning you assign it. So a needle becomes a sword, the scissors become a key, the chalk becomes a door. It's the transmutation of feelings that's referenced earlier in the film. They reopen an old wound that maybe doesn't physically exist, but exists in their minds. It's a door to the heart. The Red Lady is finally unleashed from Mother Mary, and eventually Sam makes a dress out of red fabrics to represent the now reforged connection the two women have. That is my summary of the film. I left out a lot of things, but I think it's best experienced firsthand. I think it is on streaming now, so you can go watch it online. Now onto some of my criticisms of the film. I felt like we were trying to balance a lot of this artsy psychological dialogue pieces with the grand, glamorous pop set pieces, and then the supernatural horror and body horror. It's not necessarily that these elements clash with one another, but it feels unbalanced. There is a lot of attention paid to the dialogue sequences in the first half of the movie. Then we pivot straight into the supernatural horror, and then we get this sort of cheesy wrap-up, which is very sentimental, but I think it works within the context of the film. But even then, I would have liked to see maybe the pop elements push further, maybe a grand final performance if we're leaning all the way into that camp. There's another somewhat funny line earlier in the movie that may not even be intentional, where Anne Hathaway's character says something like, "Is it actually a real door? I'm exhausted with all these metaphors," which is maybe a reflection of the audience at this point in the film, because Michaela Cole, throughout the whole thing, she's talking all these loopy, poetic, overwrought words that maybe are lacking in substance, but they are meant specifically for Mary, who has that experience with Sam. And maybe that's where the emotional disconnect comes in. And about the music in this film, I'm a little bit conflicted because when I first heard that Charlie XCX and FKA Twigs were contributing to the project, I immediately thought this was going to be a knockout. But listening to the soundtrack on its own, it's a little bit off and maybe not believable. Of course, there's this whole suspension of disbelief aspect, but I don't think it really works. We have these very atmospheric tracks like Dark Cradle and Blue Flame. At first, I thought these pieces would be more for scoring the movie, but it turns out these are end credit songs. I do struggle to believe that a magnanimous giant pop star would have these two songs as some of her biggest hits of all time. I also feel like Jack Antonoff really only did his thing on Burial. That is a very good song, and it's used as sort of the opening score. But then you have songs like Holy Spirit 1 and 2, of course The Dark Cradle and Blue Flame, and Cut Ties. It feels a little bit like we were maybe missing the assignment or rushing things out, because these don't really feel like giant, glamorous pop songs, but they also don't have the moody, dark aesthetic that would fit into this very Catholic religious iconography. That is more of a nitpick, but on a film that focuses on a pop star, I would like a little something more, especially with such major big name contributions. And it's not just the music. I would have liked to see more of the entire pop persona explored. How Mary's relationship with her audience affects her. How maybe she loses her sense of self as she morphs into the Mother Mary image, which was shaped both by her audience and Sam's character. Sam made these original extravagant dresses in her own image of who Mother Mary was, rather than who Mother Mary is as an actual person. There's these constant accusations of Sam being, this was all about you, this was always all about you. And I would have liked to see how that created some internal conflict in Mother Mary, because in her mind, her image was split between herself, Sam, and the audience, being what other people want her to be. The floating red halo of the Red Lady is, of course, a reflection of Mother Mary's signature halo, created and designed by Sam. One of my big takeaways from the whole ad campaign for this movie, yes, I'm going to reference the ad campaign, is the line, "This is not a ghost story, this is not a love story." And I agree that it's neither. It's a film about love and maybe ghosts, but that's not the full story. This is sort of a film about metaphors, the process of weaving emotions into messages, expressing the incomprehensible through what's left unspoken, and translating a personal vision into a mutual understanding. Opening the door, closing the rift. Compromise. And again, that's sort of my issue with the film. I would have liked more to chew on. You won't find a cathartic release or an explosion of emotion at the end of the story, but you might uncover something more tender and more delicate. Something like a dress. Not something to be worn, but to be admired. I don't think this film is really shallow or vapid as some people might suggest. If anything, I think it's jam-packed with meaning. I think it may just be poorly communicated and filled with pretentious imagery. Sometimes I even struggle to make sense of the themes because it's very abstract. But the aesthetics and the visual style were so appealing to my taste that I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and fill in the blanks with my own interpretations. It's cutting it very close to a 2-hour runtime, but honestly, I think it'd be better with an extra 10 to 15 minutes. Something to flesh out the connection between the literal and the metaphysical, or draw a dividing line between them. I heard that this film initially finished in 2024, but there were so many production delays and editing delays that it got pushed all the way to 2026, and of course it got buried under all the upcoming horror coming out. I thought the intro sequence of this film was very compelling. It's quick, it's snappy, it pulls you right into the story, with Michaela Cole's character narrating this deep-seated pain and resentment she feels, and it establishes that nearly supernatural connection between the two people. But I think I would have enjoyed a deeper look into the past between these two characters. And again, I would have enjoyed using the music of Mother Mary as more of a plot device in the film instead of just something to toss onto the side for extra sales and something for A24 to release as merch. One song in the soundtrack called Cut Ties, I think, perfectly encapsulates Mary's experience being apart from Sam. And this song is only used for like a 20-second sequence in the film. The big, grand, emotional climax of the song isn't even present in the film, it's just relegated to the soundtrack. To briefly touch on the whole Mother Mary band plagiarism situation, I have mixed feelings on it because on some level, I do believe that an indie band with like less than 100,000 monthly listeners, it's within their right to take on this big company like A24. But at the same time, I almost feel like this is less about artistic integrity and more about getting a quick buck by jumping to attack the flavor of the moment. And I don't say that lightly. I checked their Spotify page to see some similarities between the music project and the film, and the first thing I see is a link to their Cash App and a playlist called Mother Mary Greatest Hits, which is, of course, what the original music soundtrack for the film is titled. And I don't have any issue with like a small group getting a quick buck off of something that's blowing up, but at least be honest about it. Like, if this is motivated by financial reasons, just be upfront about it. Trying to posture yourselves as this big countercultural feminist anti-Christian, not anti-Christian, but using the image of Christianity to combat patriarchy. That's not really what this film is about at all. And not only that, it's not really an original concept either way. We have these big Gaga and Madonna comparisons to the Mother Mary character, which seem to also be the source of inspiration for the Mother Mary band. Not to be too cynical, but yeah, it feels kind of sinister to tear down the work of not just David Lowery, but the set designers, the dressmakers, the actors, all their work just disregarded to push your own material. So that is my quick summary and analysis of Mother Mary. I'm kind of bridging the gap between uploads here, but this was a film that I really enjoyed and was kind of sad that it bombed at the box office. It's a complete visual feast, and there's a lot of things to enjoy, especially in the first act of the movie. Michaela Cole is the standout here, and I think Anne Hathaway gives a very good performance. If you're into pretty visuals and a narrative that lets you fill in a lot of the gaps on your own, definitely catch this on streaming. I believe it's currently rentable right now. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap things up now. I hope you guys enjoyed. See you on the next video. That will probably be either Call Me By Your Name or Leviticus. So yeah, see you guys next time.